Welcome to the next video. This one's going to be getting into this topic of surviving the rough spots, the inevitable challenges that are going to come your way, and how to not only survive, but to flourish as you're going through them. Now, one of the things that we consistently hear from entrepreneurs that they've experienced is this whole idea of failure. And none of us like to fail. You know, that's just not in our DNA. We want to always be successful. But if you're going to think like an entrepreneur and approach your career as an entrepreneur, you're going to fail along the way. You're going to hit some rough spots. You're going to make some decisions that get you out of your comfort zone. It's going to be frightening, but that's okay. That's normal. That's to be what's expected. And so the purpose of this video is really to kind of help you prepare for the inevitable challenges that you're going to face and give you some ways to help make it less traumatic, a little bit easier to get through those experiences. Now, I'd like to offer a context for you to think about in this whole area of dealing with obstacles and challenges. When you look at this sailboat, any of you that are experienced sailors will be able to look at it and say, oh, that's exactly the way that boat is designed, and that's exactly what it should be doing. And that's true. But if you're inexperienced and look at it, you can say it looks like it's going to tip over. It's right on the verge. And so the idea is sailing is just a great metaphor for a lot of the things we're talking about. You know, in order to be a good sailor, you got to practice. You got to communicate. You got to work with your team. You got to work with the other players. You need wind. You need opposition. And in fact, the challenge is to take that opposition and convert it into power and energy that drives you forward. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can think about sailing as just a metaphor to guide you through some of the decisions that you'll wind up making along the way. One thing to consider is whenever you make change in your life, especially any kind of big change, you're taking on a new challenge, you're going to a new job, you graduate from college, you're moving, whatever, you can confront this concept called the valley of despair pretty easily. And the whole idea is that once you make the change, there's maybe a little initial euphoria, you're happy about it, and then reality starts kicking in. And you start realizing, oh my gosh, why did I do this? What happened? Why did I make this change? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do it, etc. And you can start going down the valley. And so the idea is, as you begin the descent, focus on survival. Take care of yourself. Take care of your health. Take care of your family. Close your ranks a little bit and pay attention. And know that what you're doing is normal. It's not a bad thing to go through a valley of despair. It's completely normal, especially when you're dealing with major change or maybe major failure of something that you've tried. So focus, take note of what's important, and get through the survival phase, and then you'll get down toward the bottom of the valley, so to speak, and then you start adapting, you start changing, you start doing things differently based on where you're at. So you've got to be tuning into what's going on in your environment, and start adapting and changing the way you act and the way you behave and the way you think, so that ultimately you start coming up the other end, and that's where you're flourishing. And so you'll come out of the valley at a higher level, hopefully, than where you would go in, and that's why it makes sense to do it. But know that while you're going through this valley, there can be some anxiety, and that again does not mean that you made a bad decision. It's completely normal, but know about it and know that it's going to happen. Now, there's a couple of things that you can do to really get to the valley more quickly. And the first is to have this focus on goal setting. So I want to talk a little bit more about setting goals and having reasonable goals that you're shooting for. The second part is really kind of knowing what your value is in today's market. So I want to talk about that a little bit and help you understand how to articulate your value a little bit more effectively. And then bottom line, enhancing your self-confidence. Continuing to reinforce the concept, use that sailing metaphor or whatever helps you, but the idea that you made some choices, you're going through some anxiety, but it's completely normal, and this too will pass, so to speak. But if you pay attention to some of these other things I want to talk about, it might help you get through the valley a little bit more rapidly and with a little less depth as you're going through it. Now, the idea of goal setting, a lot of you are going to be familiar with this acronym SMART that I just want to cover with you. But there's some key things to think about when you're setting goals. I mean, you want them to be specific. You want to be able to articulate what they are and talk with some specificity associated with it. It should be measurable. You got to be able to see, when did I do it? I'm going to go meet 3 people, or I'm going to go do a salary review, or whatever it is. It's measurable, and you know when you've accomplished it. That it is attainable. There's a lot of folks that say, "Oh, we got to have these stretch goals and really push myself." And yeah, it's okay to have a few stretch goals, but they still need to be attainable. If they're so so big of a stretch that you can never attain them, then you're going to give up on them. So make sure that they can be challenging, and they should be challenging, and not necessarily easy, but that they need to be attainable. They need to be relevant, they need to be tied to what you're trying to do, and that they make sense, and that there's some kind of time base. We establish goals, but what are you going to do next week, next month? When are you going to have this done? And hold yourself accountable to those specific things. Okay, I'm going to have this done in 1 week, and next Friday I'm going to have it completed. So if you focus on that approach and use this SMART acronym as a guide, it can help you greatly in the development of goals that are attainable and that you're going to accomplish. Now, when it comes to talking about what do you think you're worth in today's market, there's 3 arguments that people tend to try to rely on, and there's only one that's legitimate. The first one that they try to use is, I want it. And maybe I want it because I just graduated, or my friend is making this much money, or I just want it. Well, you can have wants, and you should know what those are, and you should be true to those. But you can't use that to justify a certain level of compensation. The second one is, I need it. And those are things like, I need it because I got student loans, or I just bought a car, or I just got married, or bought a house, or whatever. And those are all personal decisions, and you need to know what you need, but you can't use it to justify any level of compensation. The only thing that's legitimate is that you deserve it. And so how do I figure out what I deserve? A legitimate question. And use this 3R approach, but what you're doing is you go out to this O-Net Online website and familiarize yourself with the ranges that are out there. And so there's ranges across different geographies, across different kinds of jobs. It's a legitimate website. Some of the ones that you probably want to stay away from are ones like Indeed and Monster.com, because they're more reported from incumbents, and they tend to inflate the ranges. And so they don't have quite as much credibility with HR directors. But O-Net's got a pretty good credibility level. So do the research, figure out what your range is for your specific skill in a given geographic area, and then establish a mini range that you feel would be appropriate. And so when you're in negotiation, when you're talking, or just to know what you're worth, even if you're not talking or doing any negotiation, that you know you're worth $40,000 a year. That's what the market is bearing, and what you're worth. And that's going to help you as you're dealing with the challenges and the anxiety associated with going through change. So you should always know what you're worth, even if you're not in the job search mode right now. Go out and do this. Start getting familiar with it. Start getting an understanding of what you're worth, and that's going to help you feel more confident as you're going through some of these change anxieties. So again, just realize that you're going to be making mistakes, you're going to fail, you're going to have some challenges along the way. That's okay. Surviving the rough spots and getting through them is completely normal. Experiencing this valley of despair is completely normal. Embrace it when it happens. Pay attention to it. When you're in it, realize I'm in the valley and I'm supposed to be here, and it's okay, and I'm going to focus on my value, and I'm going to focus on my goals, and I'm going to get through it as fast as I can. But know that it's a normal experience for you to go through, And if you're not taking risks and you're not failing and you're not making mistakes and you're not experiencing a valley, you might be playing it a little too conservatively. So we encourage you to take the risk, learn to sail, get out there, take the risk, push yourself, and experience and kind of relish when you're going through the valley, because you will come out the other end and you're going to be a stronger, better person for going through it. So that completes the video on the survive, adapt, and flourish concept and getting through the rough spots. And so this wraps up the 3 videos associated with exploring your passion in the first module, collective module in the I-Inc model. So the next ones we're going to be getting into is taking your concept into the market and ultimately developing a sweet spot associated with that. So hope you're looking forward to those. And again, thank you for participating in the program.